Okay, so now we say we have 4 phases of the systematic behavior change approach called according to the RANAS model. The first phase is to identify the potential behavior and the behavioral factors and the contextual factors. And this is a very, very crucial step, and I will spend quite some time on this first step, specifically on the first box to identify the behavior and the factors. So first of all, it is very important that you identify the behaviors that you want to change in your project. And you have to be very specific. You have to think out of the perspective of your target population, of the user of a toilet. And you have to define very precisely what is your behavior. So for example, in a latrine use project, is it actually that you want people to build a toilet, or is it more that your target behavior is that people purchase a toilet, or is it more that you use an existing toilet, or is it also maybe several of those behaviors? So this is very important that the approach works, because we want to look into the head of the people, and the behavioral factors are very behavior specific. You will see later. In the example of hand washing, it is very helpful to define key situations. It makes your whole behavior change strategy much easier and much more target. Or in the case of littering, is it that you want people to use garbage cans, or that they take their garbage home? This makes a difference. So you have to be very precise in thinking of those behaviors that you actually need to change to achieve the goals of your project. Safe drinking water, of course, this also depends on the contextual factors. Do you want people to boil their water, or rather to buy safe water, or chlorinate it, or go to a different place, a different well where there is safe water? All these things you have to answer beforehand. So to see how that was done, I give over to Mikael, that he gives you some insight into how this is then translated into a project.
Thank you, Andrea. Yeah, so we will take the case of a project in Burkina Faso that Morija is implementing since 5 years, actually, in an area where there are 27 villages, so a rural area. And there on the picture, you have the model of latrine that they built, and you have the hand washing device on the right with the lady, the young lady. It was not about building a latrine, because the coverage of the territory was around 74%. They made a huge effort convincing people to get involved in latrine building, so this worked. But it was more the use of latrine that was one key question, and how people would have more ownership and use indeed the latrine instead of using it for putting material or whatever, as I saw sometimes on the field. So the question was how to do better, and they targeted 2 behaviors. So the one was use of the latrine versus open defecation, which was the former behavior that people had. And the second behavior was hand washing after the use of the latrine. So that was the idea of the team. Can you go next, please? So together with RANAS, we did a 10-day training. Defecation, it means poop, or how do you say in German? I don't know. It means going into a field outside the toilet to do what you need to do. Yeah, so the first challenge, great. The first challenge is sometimes to define the behavior. So we did a 10-day training in Burkina Faso with a RANAS expert and me to first discuss how to to define well the proper behavior that we want to address. So we did the exercise on the right. If you can read French, you will see some funny things. And the idea there was to split the behavior into 3 steps: the preparatory behavior, the main behavior, and the terminating behavior. So they took the example of drinking. So you take a bottle, you turn the top, and then you drink. So you have many behaviors in one main behavior, actually. So for this project, that was not so hard, but sometimes it's a challenge, actually, for an operational team to be in the shoes of users, you know. And for that reason, that was good to integrate all stakeholders that were involved in the project, not just the top managers or the project coordinators, but also the people, the facilitators, hygiene facilitators, who were day after day with the beneficiaries of the project, because they knew really the challenges they were facing. Can go next, please. So in this case, yeah, as you see on the picture, so here we gathered all stakeholders of the project. So you have 4 hygiene facilitators, so people will go day by day into the villages, trying to make people change, actually, to have proper behaviors. And then you have the monitoring evaluation guy and the project director. And so there were quite a lot of discussions how we define the behavior properly. And finally, they confirmed that these 2 behaviors were really the focus that people wanted to have to focus on. So 2 behaviors, and the hand washing was strictly defined in the key situation after the latrine use. So basically they were combined together, these 2 behaviors. And one thing that is important, maybe some of you are NGO people, the RANAS project must be, it's not just a study or scientific study, it should be rooted in the project cycle. It's not something that is disconnected. And that was really a learning from us, that it really helps the daily operations in the end. That's the main goal. One thing I want to highlight too is that contextual factors, of course, these are not behavioral factors, but they have to be taken into account. In Burkina Faso, for example, you don't talk about latrine use the same way during the rainy season or the hot season. Because during the rainy season, it means that people are in their fields, and so it's harder to go back home to do what you have to do. So you have to take this into account, and so somehow it's a seasonal behavior in the case of latrine use in this project. You can go next.
Okay. So now I want to give you a task, just a little task. So I would ask you, please define the behavior that you want to change in your project. Or if you don't have a project, if you're not in an NGO, maybe you think of a behavior that you want to change for yourself. And remember what we said, you have to be very specific. It has to be an action you can perform. So I give you 1 minute. And I would like to ask you to write down in the chat, what's the behavior that you want to change? Okay. So we are still in the first box of the RANAS systematic behavior change approach. And we have defined the behavior now. And now we want to define the behavioral factors. So far, this has been a bit vague and not very specific. So now you will see what is meant by behavioral factors. And maybe that also answers this one question in the chat. What is meant by the head of the people? I hope this gets clearer after that. So the behavioral factors, let's see. imagine you're standing in front of this group of people, and you want to talk about that they need to chlorinate their water because it looks really dirty. So what we want to do, or what we do, is to think of what could be in the heads of people. So what could they think? What are their concerns? What are their mindsets? What are their emotions and their feelings? So this is what we mean by the head of the people. So for example, one may think, so, oh, am I actually at risk of this dirty water? And why is that? The next one may have concerns of how can I do this? Is it too complicated? The next one may have concerns about what does it cost? Maybe it's too expensive. I don't even know what it costs, but it's going to be too expensive anyway. The next one may think like, do I like this? What about the taste of the water? Maybe it's ugly afterwards, or just in general, I don't like to do it. The next one will have concerns about what will others say? What will my neighbors say if I do this? Maybe they think I'm a weird person. It's not very common that people actually use disinfectant for their water. The next one, can I do it? Am I able to do it? Maybe it's way too complicated and I can't learn it. And another one will simply think like, okay, I understood everything and I know I have to do it. And I think it's very important, but how can I manage in my daily routine? Like I have to do all these different things during the day. How do I manage to fit in this new behavior that I need to do? So we have all these different concerns in people's minds, and we want to know more about those. And these factors or these concerns, these bubbles, we can arrange along 5 factors that have been derived from psychological models. And we group them into risk factors, that is about vulnerability and the perceived health risk, for example. Then we have attitude factors, that is about emotions, but also cost benefit evaluations are also attitude factors. Then we have the normative factors, that is what do my peers do, or what do important other people do, and is it going to be approved, or am I a weird person if I do that? Then we have ability factors, so-called, that is more the ability of, am I able to do it, or do I have the resources to do it, the capability, and how is it done? And then we have so-called self-regulation factors, that is more about the management of behavior in a daily routine. So all those factors are known to influence behavior. And they do influence the target behavior using a latrine, but also they influence not using a latrine. And we want to know what's the difference between those 2 behaviors in terms of the factors. So we presume the factors are different for the ones using a latrine and the ones not using a latrine. The model has been published and you can see on our website, we have lots of publications that confirm this model and the effectiveness of the approach, if you're coming from research or interested in research. Here again, you see the model. So again, we have the factors and some more questions that show you what are these groups of factors about. And you can also see we have on the left side, we have behavior change techniques that are proven to influence those factors. And these we have put together in a model. And below we have the contextual factors that of course also influence people. So again, this is the head of the people. what we mean by looking into the head of the people. We want to assess those factors. The promotion campaign has been designed targeting those factors, and the factors itself then in the end lead to the behavior change. So now I will give you a little insight in how we do that. So how can we identify the potential behavioral and contextual factors to go this approach? The first step is to go into the project and have a qualitative interview with some people and have household observations. So we want to know what's in the heads of the people in relation to latrine use and not latrine use. What's in the heads of those using a latrine? What's their concerns? What's their mindsets? What do they think about it? And what perceptions do they have? And we want to know that from those who don't use a latrine as well. So you see a large set of questions, but this is only done with like a dozen of people. And it's important to include also stakeholders, but also users. So maybe, Michael, you want to tell how you did this in Burkina.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so this first step of doing the qualitative interview, we did an exercise with the team and trying to be in the shoes of the beneficiaries or in the shoes of the users and non-users. And the idea was to write down the typical thoughts that people have about this behavior or the opposite one. And the idea is for the team to understand what people think and not judge them, but they have to be out of their facilitation role that they have sometimes in the project and be in the shoes of the user. So if you look at the flip charts there, so I took the both behaviors, the use of latrine, I would translate because it's in French. And so some people think it's white people business, we defecate in the open and we like it. And white people try to impose that. So it's the business of white people and we don't want that. Other people think we do not defecate in a house. That's quite interesting, as we used to have in the past in Europe. The toilets outside of the house, that's still something that people think is not good for cultural reasons. Then some of them find pleasure being in the bush to defecate. They like to feel the wind and whatever. I heard different stories about that. And some others, they feel ashamed to be seen, to go in their latrine, especially when there's a woman around. So imagine you're at someone's place and usually they do the cooking outside, in the villages, and you have the man going to the latrine and he tries not to be seen. That may be funny, but actually it has a big impact that people don't want to use a latrine. About hand washing, below, we also have this white people business. Some people think it's tiring to do that. It's not important. There's also kind of a preconceived idea that dirt doesn't kill the African guy. We are stronger than dirt. And another thing that I found interesting in the context is that for some people, those who have clean hands, they are actually the ones that are lazy. So basically, if you have clean hands, it means that you don't work and you don't work hard and you are lazy. So it's not a good thing. Yeah. Maybe, yeah, one thing about the data collection. So we used Morija had a team of hygiene facilitators and other type of facilitators in other projects. And that was very important. We chose to use the project people, but to avoid some bias in data collection, because when people will see them, they will say, oh, that's the hygiene facilitator, I should behave well or say the right thing. So we shifted they were separated and shifted in different areas. And also we use facilitators from other type of projects of Morija to do the data collection to avoid this bias. And we can go next. So as Andrea explained, it's not a big sample of people that we take for this phase. It's only, in our case, it was 15 to 20 people, as far as I remember. And here I took the typical thought. So the step I just showed was the team who did that. And now that these are the results of the survey. So concerning latrine use, yeah, you can read them through, but maybe I will highlight some of them. For the users, there was we found that there was a feeling of security, especially for women, because when they went into the bush, they could be discovered and they could be bitten by a snake. All these type of things came out. Of course, people say we have better health, a cleaner environment. I have a latrine is close to home, so it's very easy to use. Some were talking about disgust of open defecation that they have now, and pollution. There's also a reality that there are less and less bush in the countryside, so because of deforestation, so people have trouble to hide. So these were the main arguments from users. The non-users, it's also interesting. Some felt like it's very hot inside, especially during the hot season, but they felt like in a prison. A few guys told that. That was funny. And on the contrary, they felt pleasure of open defecation, contact with nature, fresh air, whatever. The white people business came out too. And the typical thought also, I just mentioned before, that people don't like to be seen going to the latrine. This came out quite strongly. On hand washing, the users argue that the odor on the hands is something that they were disgusted from that, and so the feeling of cleanliness was important to them. Of course, they knew that it would protect them from health issues, and they were proud to have clean hands. And the non-users, so people who didn't wash their hands too often, or especially after latrine use, they also knew that it would protect them from health issues, but for some reason they didn't care. They highlighted that it was complicated, loss of time. They assumed that they were lazy, and yeah. And there was also this factor of shame, because if you wash your hand right after being in the latrine, people will know that you have been to the latrine. So we come back to the other behavior and this shame of being seen. So I like this phase. Honestly, it was good to confirm a few typical thoughts that people have, and it helped us to build the next survey that Andrea will show you now, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. So remember, if I go back one slide, we are still in the phase of openly assessing what could be mindsets around our behaviors. But we still have to look more in detail and more quantity also to what of these beliefs really make the difference. So, but I would like to give you another individual task. So before you thought about the behavior that you would like to change. Now think about behavioral factors, that is motives and drivers of the behavior you want to change in the mindsets of yourself or of the population. So think about what really makes the difference in the behavior you thought of before. So I give you 2 minutes, and again, please write it down in the chat.